Luck be a plug-in tonight. Luck be a plug-in tonight. Gotta get my WordPress site just right. Luck be a plug-in tonight. Hey all you cool cats and kittens. Joe Simpson here on the left coast, the best coast. Greetings to you and yours wherever you may be. Let's get rid of this and let's take a trip. We're going to take a trip to Las Vegas. So put on your comfortable travel clothes. We're going to travel virtually, of course, because in this stay-at-home pandemic, these pandemic times that we're living in, we don't travel as much as we used to. But one of my favorite trips was to go to Vegas. Now imagine, you board the plane, you take off, and as you approach Vegas, it's an incredible sight. It's pitch black because you're traveling through the desert, but off in the distance you see lights shooting up in the sky from the various casinos. Bright neons, blues, purple, pinks, magentas. It's so colorful. So you get a sense of excitement that builds as you prepare to land. But you might be wondering, what the heck does this have to do with WordPress? Why did I come to this meetup to talk about Las Vegas? Hold tight. We'll get to that in a second. Now just imagine me. I'm your tour guide for this trip. I'm that person that's standing off in the distance. We've been to the airport a number of times, and excuse me here. We've been to the airport a number of times, and we see those limo drivers or those folks that are waiting for someone specific to walk through the door. So imagine me. I'm that person off in the distance with a WordPress sign saying, "Hello and welcome to WordPress. I'm going to be your tour guide today." And what I generally do with my presentations, I gear them towards beginners because the information that I provide, oftentimes folks that are advanced, they may not remember all of these things, or someone that's new to the community may not know of these resources. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to walk you through the world of plugins for beginners, but it won't be a closed or focused presentation. I want everyone to be involved. So if you're an advanced person, I'd love for you to share what you know about plugins, and anywhere in between. This is a very interactive presentation. So let's get started. I'll tell you a little bit about myself first. My name's Joe Simpson. These are some of the things that I ping on my resume. I've been using WordPress since 2010. I'm active as can be. I try to do as much for the community as I possibly can. And I'll tell you a little bit about why as we move forward with this presentation. But recently, I've worked on Joe Dolson's very first annual WordPress Accessibility Day. It was a 24-hour back-to-back WordPress accessibility information. It was a great event. Also, I've been on the programming team for WordCamp US. I've led our organizing WordCamp Santa Clarita here in Santa Clarita, California. I have 2 meetups here. Actually, we have a meetup that's meeting a little later today, and we're going to be talking about hosting, so you're welcome to join us there. As well as I work during the day for one of the largest transportation companies in the world, Metro Los Angeles, helping get people out of their cars and onto public transit, and I manage their blog network. My story with WordPress began way back around 2010. Our lead developer and our CSS goddess both left our company within 1 month of each other. And I inherited a WordPress blog for our news organization website, The Source, and the rest is history. I had to figure out how to build a child theme. And you know how, if you've ever inherited something, a lot of folks in the WordPress community got their start that way. Someone in the company left and you were assigned a task of maintaining a WordPress site. So that's how it started for me. Fortunately, we had a little budget that year. We're a government agency, and they sent me to the WordPress VIP Intensive Developer Workshop in Napa Valley. Now imagine I'm a graphic designer turned HTML guy starting to learn WordPress. I had no back-end experience. So imagine all of the biggest folks in the WordPress community, all of their lead developers on the automatic team were there. And the first thing they asked everyone to do as we sat down was spin up a virtual box with WordPress installed. And just imagine me, someone that's a front-end guy, a design guy, having that task. But the amazing thing, and that was my first exposure to the WordPress community, was everyone and anyone that I turned to with questions, everybody helped out. Everybody was so free and welcoming. They were so free with their knowledge and so welcoming in terms of helping out. I was like, wow, this is totally different. I come from a corporate environment where it's dog eat dog and step on somebody as you move up the ladder kind of thing. And this was so refreshing that I fell in love with it. Zoom ahead to 2017. I found myself on a table similar to this, in an operating room, not knowing whether I'd live or die. I had two 100% blocked arteries, and fortunately, they were able to unclog them, and I started my journey back. But while I took a 3-month leave of absence from my company, and at that time I decided I was only gonna refocus on things that I truly love doing. And I remember back to my first experience with WordPress, and I said, hey, let me get involved with WordPress. Let me do all these things that I used to do as a creative that I don't do anymore. You know, you get into the day-to-day, mundane, boring, you have to make ends meet. You do something over and over and over just to make ends meet, and you lose that love for what you do. So I decided at that time I was gonna black everything else out and focus on the things that I truly loved. And so from that point until now, when you see me here in front of you, I've been 100% going all out in terms of WordPress, learning as much as I can, sharing as much as I can, giving back as much as I can. So I started speaking. I took the stage at WordCamp Chicago back in 2018, and I've been presenting ever since. I had started a Meetup. Then I said, hey, let me do something even crazier. There hasn't been a WordCamp in Santa Clarita. We're about 45 minutes north of Los Angeles. And there hadn't been a WordCamp north of Los Angeles and south of San Francisco since 2014, which was up in San Francisco. So I said, let's do something crazy. We're a small area. We're a growing area in WordPress. Let's do a WordCamp. So we've had 2 of those. And like I said, I've gotten involved in anything and everything I could in terms of community. Here's my contact information. I would love to hear from you. I'm always encouraging folks to come in, especially now in the virtual world. We pop in all over. Like for instance, here I'm in the UK again after 6 years. I was there physically 6 years ago, but it's great to be back talking to you virtually. So it's very easy to click on a Zoom link and join a topic somewhere around the world that's of interest to you. So you can find me here on any of these social media, email, it's Gmail at Joe Simpson Jr., that kind of thing. Facebook, look up Joe Simpson Jr., Twitter, LinkedIn. That's how you can find me. Joe Simpson Jr., one word. Today's slides will be available at this bit link, Joe Simpson Jr., OWPM for your meetup. Let's get started. I always like to start with something inspirational because, again, my story is a story of inspiration, of giving back, of sharing. And today's presentation, the reason why I picked Las Vegas is that you get overwhelmed. When you land in Vegas, there's noise, there's sounds, there's slot machines, card machines, music, noise. There's people everywhere, so much activity, but you can lose focus. And today's presentation on plugins is the same way. When you're new to the WordPress community and you're new to building a website, you have to get a website done by a certain time. You have so many choices. You have to make a choice on theme. You have to make a choice on plugins. And there's lots and lots and lots of those, and you can feel overwhelmed. So that's the analogy. Las Vegas is beautiful, big, glitzy, glamour, but how do you focus in on what you really need? And that's what we're going to talk about today, because as Albert Einstein said, out of clutter, find simplicity. So I'm going to talk to you about my approach to plugins, talk a little bit about how I look into finding plugins, and hopefully at the end, I'll hear a little bit from you, and we'll share and we'll learn together. Okay, you're walking into a casino. You see the noise, you hear the noise, you see the sounds. You pull the arm on a slot machine. It spins. Lucky 7. Don't install anything until you hear this presentation. Now, I say that because a lot of times at our meetup, someone will walk up to me during a break and say, hey, Joe, I purchased a premium plugin, a premium theme, and I can't figure out how to use it. And a lot of times we're overwhelmed. We say, hey, we need this, we need that, we need functionality for a calendar, we need functionality for a search engine. And we often immediately go and buy something before trying it out first. So a lot of times folks abandon projects or get frustrated because they've overcommitted. So this presentation is to tell you to hold on, take in these tools and tips that I'm going to share with you, and maybe that'll help you move forward. Okay, we're going to start with some definitions. What is a WordPress plugin? Okay, a plugin is a function or a feature that you add to your site. It's a bit of code. When you add it, adds functionality or extends what you currently have in your WordPress installation. So, for instance, you may need something to do a certain specific action. Again, you may want it to help you with SEO. There's a plugin that you plug in, that you install in your WordPress installation, and it immediately activates all of these features that you can use as part of your WordPress theme. And the great thing about WordPress is that if you think you need something, for example, we're working on a project currently, a team of us, we're in this competition on accessibility, and say, hey, we need an accessibility plugin. Someone's built it already. So that's the great thing about open source. Whatever you're thinking you're doing, it's probably already been done, but if it hasn't, you have an itch to build something. Okay, we talked about a previous example. Another example is an e-commerce store. A lot of folks want to sell something. I'm currently trying to spin up a t-shirt site. And how would you do that in the WordPress space? WooCommerce. So again, you go out, you find that plugin, you install it, and then you have the functionality of it, and all you have to do is implement it. All right, here are some numbers. What do these numbers mean? 58,087. That's the number of plugins that are available. Now go back to the Las Vegas analogy. There's so many things. How do you know which 1, 2, 3, etc. plugins you may need for your website? 58,000 is a lot to choose from. Okay, like say for instance you want to find a calendar plugin. You go to the search box, you enter calendar, and it pulls up a list of items. How do you decide which one to use? For example, there's a page full of calendar plugins that are available for WordPress, but how do you decide which ones you're going to use? Okay, let's talk about another thing that you'll deal with as a beginner. You'll immediately be faced with how many is too many. Now, I'm working on this project I mentioned on an accessibility competition, and one of the developers that's working on it, I logged into the site and I looked at the back end, and it went from 5 plugins to 20 plugins, just like that. How many is too many? Okay, you have so many to choose from. You need a spam filter, you need e-commerce, you need a page builder, you need a security plugin, you need a backup plugin. But just like the slot machines, there's so many variations to choose from, and only few are winners for you. Okay, although you'll hear a different number from different people for different reasons, too many plugins on your site can have the following effects. It can slow down your site. And we all know speed is king when you're on the web. You need your pages slow, fast, or people will be off and onto something. If it takes longer than 3 seconds, and you hear a number of different numbers. Some people say 1 second, some people say 2. If it takes 3 or more than 3 seconds, 40% of people are out. And these numbers vary. You'll hear numbers higher than that, dramatically higher. So again, you want to build something that's fast. If you have plugins on your site that become out of date, or that aren't kept up to date by the developers, these can create security holes and put your site at risk for being hacked. So again, you have to be on top of these things, and we'll talk a little bit about that more later. Various combinations, like I showed you the slot machine analogy, can cause conflicts, and that can cause your site to crash. At our meetups, we're very nurturing. We have a lot of interactivity. We want to learn because we're a new community. We want to learn and grow together. So it's a lot of interactivity. We do a lot of teaching, but it's very interactive. So here's an example. Our first question during this meetup, and again, unfortunately, I couldn't do it live because I had a torn rotator cuff and I'm in the middle of rehab, so I can't really sit for long stretches. So I've pre-recorded this presentation, but at the end, take a note of these questions and we'll do some give and take at the end. And again, I appreciate you accommodating me, but I really wanted to share, and this is the only way that I could do it in my current situation. All right, so the first question is, how many is too many? Would you say 25 to 50 plugins are too many? Up to 20 plugins? 0 to 5 plugins? No limits. I love living on the edge. Now in Vegas, you know, what you do in Vegas, you leave behind. You live risky, but in terms of plugins, you'll say, hey, I don't have any limits. Which one of these is it? I'll give you a second. All right, the answer is up to 20 plugins. Now again, this could be a cause for debate, but the more you have, the more it impacts your performance. So again, depending on the combination, depending on what you need for it, I wouldn't go up to 20. I generally try to keep it under 10. And again, this is not an arbitrary number, but it's just sort of a recommendation for you to be careful with. All right. Does WordPress plugin performance matter? Google has indicated that site speed is one of its important ranking factors. So slower sites are being punished. It's taken into consideration how you rank and how you display in SEO. So the slower your site, your site in terms of the plugins you've installed and how they affect your performance, it can really hurt you. So again, be aware that, you know, there's AMP technology and other things that can help speed up your site. But again, you want to be as lightweight and as fast as possible. If you're selling something on the web, a 1 second delay in page response can cause a 7% reduction in conversions. Now that's amazing. Imagine a site like Amazon. They get that information up and they get you through the process as quickly as possible. You don't want your WooCommerce site to be hanging or unloading images or doing a specific function. So again, plugins can really impact your performance. So you have to be careful and you have to test. What are some plugin best practices? I sort of teased one at that last statement. But the biggest thing I would recommend is to update. I love to tell a story. When I first got into WordPress, one of the first things I wanted to do in terms of giving back was do a project for my brother. He had built a WordPress site, and he used an overseas company, I think in Pakistan, to build his site. And the first day I logged in, I looked at the theme in the customizer. It was a bootleg theme with no description. It was pretty much blank. There were so many plugins that hadn't been updated ever. So the site had viruses. I had to clean it up. It was a mess. So again, update. It only can help, and it keeps your core. Make sure you update the core for one. You can update your themes, plugins consistently. Now the WordPress core has the ability to update automatically. Now I know that's a bad word to a lot of developers, and I may get some feedback. You can also enable that for your clients as well. And that means it'll update when there's an update available. And I'm sorry, it's it's early during this presentation recording. But yeah, keep it current, and that'll help you in terms of keeping your plugins safe and secure. Only use the plugins you really need. A lot of times we'll try out plugins and we may find it doesn't work, and you may deactivate it and leave it on your site. That could become a hole that somebody could jump through and make your site vulnerable as well. So if you're not using it, delete it. Again, that'll reduce the number of things that can tax your site and slow it down. Uninstall and delete all unused plugins, just like I just said. That's a good practice in general. I have a site on our network at Metro where I mentioned I was on a leave, and during the times I'm out, people sneak in and they, our developers or our administration team sneak in and put in plugins, and some of these plugins have never been used. So I go in and make sure I clean those up all the time. Test, test, test. Test all your new plugins before you install. If you have a staging environment, and some of you as beginners may not know what staging is, or you may not utilize it, try to work somewhere locally or on a staging environment and test out your plugins before you push them over to your live site. You never know when there could be a conflict. You may have done some custom plugin work, or one of the plugins that exists may not work well with the plugin that you install, and it could bring your site down. Use a consistent process to pick plugins. Now I'm going to show you my process, but you should have some sort of process. You shouldn't just install a plugin because your friend Jane told you, or you read about it on Google. I'm going to show you my process, and again, you can modify it for your own process, but have some sort of process, and that'll keep you safe as well. All right, how do you find the right plugin? Okay, the first thing I would recommend is always find your plugins through your WordPress install. And that means in your admin, you go to plugins and you go add new. This is going to bring up the standard WordPress interface with the repository at wordpress.org/plugins. You have 3 ways that you can search in the plugin repository. Now again, you may say, hey, why can't I search on Google? You can search on Google for reviews and find out about the plugins you find here, but on Google you'll get premium plugins, you'll get bootleg plugins, and the premium plugins and bootleg plugins haven't been vetted in the repository. Now think of the repository, and I'll give it to you in a car analogy. You have a Honda or a BMW. You need to have it serviced. You could take it to Jack's auto dealer, auto service center in the center of town, or you can take it to an authorized Mercedes-Benz or Honda dealer and get guaranteed certified service. That's how I would look at this, the repository. The repository, they would have a number of criteria that all plugins must meet to get into the repository, so you know it's at least met some baseline standard of quality. You don't get that with premium themes. All you get is marketing claims on how great they are, but there's no guarantee that it's been vetted. If you search for plugins on Google, it can have bugs, it can have viruses built into it, and you would never know because you haven't been through the repository. So again, in the repository, you have 3 areas where you could search. You could search on keyword. It has an autocomplete feature that'll suggest as you type, which is awesome. You can search by author. If you know the author, you can type the author's name in. I mentioned I volunteered for WordPress Accessibility today. Joe Dolson is a leader in accessibility in WordPress. So you can search by his name, or you can search for a tag, search, calendar. Those kind of things can help you find as well. All right, so as you search, you'll notice that there are a number of plugins that WordPress suggests for you right off the bat. These are often the most popular ones, or ones that they want to feature. All right, so say for instance you wanted to install a Jetpack. Once you click on the Jetpack, more details, you'll get a screen like this. I always suggest taking a look at this. You'll see a number of things that can help you decide. There's often a description, there's installation instructions, there's usually frequently asked questions. This is a great area to check. It tells you what kind of questions people have when they install this plugin, or when they need service or maintenance questions answered. In the right-hand column, there's some important information. It tells you the version, it tells you who the author is, it tells you the average rating, it tells you how many people have installed it. These things are all critical because you don't want to install a plugin that only has 15 active installations. There's no record or no track record of how it performs. It may be a plugin that your friend built, but again, it may not have been vetted thoroughly through use, which is another key factor. If lots of people have downloaded it, there's lots more reviews to take a look at. And I would always suggest taking a look at the negative as well as the positive reviews. If there's lots and lots of negative reviews on a plugin that's been installed quite a bit, that may give you pause to install. All right, so let's go through a few areas to take a look at what you should look at when you're taking a look at plugins. You should look at when the plugin was last updated. You always want to install plugins that are constantly updated because, as you know, the core is constantly updated. Themes are constantly updated. Plugins are constantly updated. And you want to know that the team that built this plugin or the developer that built this plugin is actively maintaining it. Next up, I would check active installs. Like I mentioned before, the more the better. But again, this in combination with the number of reviews is important. So you always want to check on the stars, check on the number of reviews, and click into some of the reviews just to take a look at what people are saying about the plugin. Also, the average rating. Some plugins get a 1-star. You may want to find out why. You also want to find out if it's compatible with your version of WordPress. Sometimes plugins aren't updated in a while, and they'll say, hey, only 5.1 or something like that, and that can give you pause to install. Now let's take a look at one that I found. It was one of the first ones. I just picked it at random. It was Awesome Alert Blocks. Again, the double A put it at the top of the list. Let's take a look. Now you can see that it says this plugin hasn't been tested in the latest 3 major versions of WordPress. So that means it's not active. Also, you can take a look and see, hey, it was updated 11 months ago. And again, this is an old slide, so it's probably it's a lot longer than that. You can see it's fewer than 10 active installations. It's 5.0. It's tested up to 5.0.8. So this plugin, I would say, hey, I don't want to use it for these reasons. That gives me pause. All right, so our next question. How to choose a WordPress plugin? Again, when was it last updated? How many active installs? What WordPress version is it compatible with? What's the average rating? And what type of reviews and support does it have? And again, these are the basics. You can quickly go through that screen, the more detailed screen, and find out these things as you go. All right, our next question, and it's thanks to one of your members in terms of a resource. Herb provided the details on this one. Again, which plugin is the most downloaded plugin of all time? Now you'll see on WordPress that when you look at certain plugins, they'll only list, they'll say 5 million plus plugins. So they don't really give you the statistics once it gets over 5 million. But anyway, in terms of plugins, which ones is the most downloaded of all time? Is it Akismet? Is it Animal Crossing New Horizons? Contact Form 7? Jetpack? Or Yoast SEO? Now, I threw in one that's sort of a curveball from left field in honor of my kids who play lots of video games. It's Yoast SEO. And thanks again to Top 10 WordPress plugin site that Herb puts together. But it's got over 277 million downloads. And you can understand why. A lot of people want to rank high, and Yoast SEO is incredibly popular, and lots of folks use it. So you may be adventurous. You may say, hey Joe, I'm not a beginner in this sense. I want to build a plugin. How do I publish my own? If you're interested in developing your own plugin, and there's lots of tutorials on sites that'll allow you to do it and walk you through it. Like for instance, there's some great tutorials on Udemy or lynda.com on how to build a plugin. And again, a plugin does a specific function on your site. All right, there's a plugin handbook that walks you through all the details that it will require you to follow if you wanted to get your plugin on the repository. It goes through all the details. And again, once you build a plugin, if you really want to put it up, it's a great way to get involved with the community. How do you give back to the community? Contributing a plugin is one way. And I always talk about this because I'm a true believer in giving back to the community, because again, it's an open source community and it's only as vibrant as you. So again, go to makewordpress.org, and there's a number of different areas you can get involved in. When I first got involved in the WordPress community, I was at WordCamp US for the first time, and I went to Contributor Day. And Contributor Day, for those that don't know, it's usually the last day of the conference where all of the folks that are contributors, developers, designers, etc., they gather together and they work on a punch list of items that are pending in the WordPress.org space in terms of the core. So there's all these different areas. You can focus on the core if you're a developer. I like to focus on design. I'm a former graphic designer. So I like to focus on accessibility. For that particular WordCamp, that WordCamp, we were hosting our very first, and I was like trying to find information on how to do videos and how to do them effectively. Like, I have a certain visual look and feel. You could tell by this video that I'm a stickler for videos. I wanted to make sure that the videos we put up had a certain level of quality, because I wanted these videos to really be a reference point for people to go in later and study on their own. So I said, hey, what's the process of doing a video? So I was on the WordPress TV team on makewordpress.org at that very first one. And I've participated on a number of different teams. So you would just scroll through the page, you would take a look at the different areas: polyglots, themes, community, plugins. And again, here's a URL for you to take a look at. But again, I would encourage you to jump in there, get involved. And there's a number of different roles you can perform. But again, it's a great way to learn about the behind the scenes of creating in the WordPress space. All right, here's some more information on Make. It sort of gives you an example of how that works. All right, so you're getting excited. How do I learn more? Again, what we try to do in our meetups here, as well as I hope you're doing in Portsmouth, is how do you learn more about WordPress? How do you solve your problems in WordPress? So I'm going to show you what I normally do. And what I normally recommend is a WordCamp. Visit a WordCamp. Generally, there's a number of topics at a WordCamp, including plugins. There's always someone talking about plugins. And again, at WordCamp Denver, David talked about building your first plugin. So you can go to WordPress TV, and I'll talk about that in a second, and you can look up David's presentation on plugins, and it'll teach you how to build your very first one. I'm a big fan of libraries. There was LinkedIn Learning purchased lynda.com. And as part of the deal, they made it available to all public libraries here in the state. So if you had a library card, you could log into lynda.com and you could use their entire library. And they have an incredible WordPress library of learning tools. And I always recommend that. Again, free first. And you hear, if you come to our meetups, we always say free first. Don't buy a premium plugin. Try it free first. Don't buy a learning module. Try something free first. And that way it'll give you an idea of what you want to learn, how difficult that topic is, and then you can invest. A lot of times we'll overbuy. I know I tried to do a JavaScript class, and 3 weeks in I knew I couldn't do it right off the bat. Although I've gotten better, I couldn't follow that pace in a 13-week span to get it done. So again, I would suggest Lynda because it's self-paced. You can go at your own pace. It's video-based, and they also provide downloadable examples that you can use and learn with. So it's a great resource. For example, I wanted to learn WooCommerce, and Patrick Rowland here that was in Denver is one of the leading teachers in that space, and he has a couple of titles on lynda.com, and they were incredibly helpful, and it helped me build my site like that. You can also, a lot of libraries offer Udemy. There were some conflicts in terms of some people felt that LinkedIn Learning's politics were sort of contrary to what libraries should do or libraries should host in terms of resources. So a few libraries went with Udemy as a free option. So again, depending on your library, and I would check your local libraries, they probably have something similar in terms of learning resources, or you can get a library card here at one of these libraries and log in. Another resource I recommend is WordPress TV. WordPress TV is the history of most WordCamps. Part of every WordCamp is that they film the sessions. And these sessions often go up on WordPress TV, and you could go back and look through them, and you could search this resource in a number of different ways. You could I would suggest this URL that you have here, and I'll make these, again, these will be available in my slides. Just go to WordPress TV/plugin, or search for plugins in the search box here that's highlighted in red, and it'll bring back all the titles where people have presented on WordPress plugins. So in summarizing, each person's use of plugins can be unique, and one size doesn't fit all. Again, this is my process, and again, these are tips that'll help you decide what you need. And again, I'm sure when we open up the floor, everyone will have a different reason for choosing the plugins that they've chosen. And again, that's fine. But again, just keep these other factors in mind, because we want your site to be fast. You want it to be efficient. We want it to make sales. We want it to do what you need it to do for your customers. Always cover your basics by installing core plugins that support site security, site performance, SEO, and analytics. These things are sort of the performance indicators of your site. You want to see where people are going on your site, because again, it's a living document. You want to make sure that the pages that they're viewing are easy to find. You want to make sure that the pages that they're finding are ranking well. You want to make sure that your site is performing, and as well, you want to make sure your site is secure. Be consistent in how you select your plugins, because again, conflicts can really impact your site. Go to the repository, make sure that the plugin has some support. You can ask questions, you can ping the developers, you can work within the community to get your answers. Again, be judicious with your use of plugins. Be very picky. Again, you don't want too many plugins, because again, that'll impact your performance. Now, here are my lucky 7 plugins. These are plugins that I recommend, and it's changing all the time. And you'll see over the course of your WordPress career, it'll change based on your client needs. You may need a client, excuse me, you may have a client that needs a certain feature, whereas another one needs something totally different. We're working on an artist site right now. So we needed to have a donate plugin. We needed to have a way to show the gallery in an interesting way. These are all plugins that you can find and install. All right, so here's my lucky 7. Currently, WP accessibility. Again, I mentioned I'm working with a team of WordPress developers in this competition to make sites as accessible as possible. So Joe Dolson's WP accessibility is one. I'm also a big fan of page builders currently. I'm at my company at Metro, we're looking for flexible options that allow our editorial team and our designer team to go in and do some drag and drop work, have a lot of flexibility in terms of design, because you know designers are crazy and they want to do anything and everything as wacky as possible. So I've been into Elementor Page Builder. It's a really popular plugin, really powerful. What I love about it, it reminds me of using the Adobe Cloud products. It's a very clean interface. I'm a big fan of WooCommerce right now. Like I said, I was trying to build a WooCommerce site. I visit Woo London quite a bit. I'm a member of that community, and I love to drop in and talk WooCommerce with them. WordFence. I always recommend WordFence as a nice free option to learn about security and keep your site safe. Yoast SEO. Again, a great SEO tool that will help your page rank. It also gives you an interesting red, green, yellow analogy, you know, the stoplight analogy. When the site's red, it has quite a few things you need to fix. Yellow, it's okay. You may need to pause and revisit some items. And green means you're good to go and your page is optimized for search engines. Jetpack. Jetpack is sort of the Swiss Army knife of WordPress. It has a whole bunch of interesting, features that you need. It has a CDN built in. It has brute force protection. It has statistics built in. It has subscribe forms. It has publicize, which allows you to repurpose your post to social media automatically. It has a lot of great features, comment forms. Yeah, it's incredible. So a lot of folks, this is a controversial one because it can take up a little bit in terms of your footprint. But again, it bundles in a lot of things like a gallery that you may need in one place, so you don't have to install 10 or 15 different plugins. Akismet, it's a spam protector. It also adds GDPR functionality to your contact forms, which is great. So that's another popular one. I always recommend a backup software. So, woo! We've been to Vegas. We're worn out. We've been up all night. We've left the casinos when the sun was up to go back and crash out for a couple hours and do it all again. We were overwhelmed. We were excited. We did it all. But you know what they say? What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. But that's not going to be the case today. I don't want you to stow away this information. I want you to utilize it. I want you to share it with others. I want you to, most importantly, tell me what you use. And I'll leave you with this. Be willing to make room in our lives for the impending birth of our dreams. I'm really big on seeing what you do. I want to build something special. I want to do something incredible. And now that you sort of have a roadmap on how to use plugins, I hope you do something incredible as well. My slides are here. You can find me, my Meetup WordPress SCV, on any of these social media channels. We have an Elementor meetup here in Santa Clarita as well. Each spring, we have WordCamp Santa Clarita. I invite you to speak. I invite you to attend. I invite you to participate. You can find me again, Joe Simpson Jr., at any of these. And again, thank you. Word up. I'll leave the slide up for a second so you